Good morning. My name is Justin Lanigan and I'm the Managing Director of LavaBox. And I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of, I'm sure, your incredibly busy schedules to join us for how to pull off the CRM project step by step. And we've got a pretty action-packed session for you today. I'd like to begin just by making two firm commitments to you. Now, the first is I'm not going to be trying to sell any particular CRM software today. Although LavaBox are Salesforce CRM specialists, the information we'll be providing will be, I hope, incredibly relevant to you regardless of the tech that you choose to work with. And the second thing is that I'm also going to try and leave the hype out of the session today. You know, when you look at the marketing for CRM, for the software, it almost seems like you buy the licenses and leads are going to start falling from the sky overnight and your sales will increase by 500% in due course. But what I can tell you is that from our own experience in business and also from the experience of many of our LavaBox customers, the journey to implementing CRM right can make a real and genuine transformation to the way that you interact with your customers and to the way that you run your business. So with that in mind, I'll just run you through what the plan is for the session today. So over the next hour and 15, I'll be running through how to pull off the CRM project step by step. And following that, a really great treat, I think you'll have heard quite enough from me after an hour and 15, we'll then be pulling up our customer panel. Now, this is a mix of 3 of our LavaBox customers who have all implemented CRM in different capacities in their businesses. So we've got Steve Boyd from Deadly Ponies, which is a luxury retail brand based here in New Zealand. And they use CRM in the customer service and support side of their business. We've also got Dave Howden from Umbrella. And Umbrella is a B2B technology company offering a wide range of IT services, including Azure Stack. And they use CRM across sales, community engagement, customer service, a huge variety of use cases. And we also have Samuel Kavanagh from One Partner. And One Partner are a vehicle finance company dealing with a high volume of transactional sales. So I think between all of those individuals, you should have some burning questions that will no doubt apply to your business and the way that you run. So before I let you know a bit about me, I'd just like to find out maybe a bit about you in the room if I can. So can I just ask for a brief show of hands, how many of you are considering implementing CRM, but you're not quite sure how to make it work in your business, and you're really looking for a clear way forward today? Perfect. And how many of you have already implemented CRM or started that journey, and you're really looking for a way to get more value out of the investment? Perfect. All right, we've got a pretty even split, that's great. Well, now that I know a little bit about you, I'll let you know a little bit about me as well. So, I started out in business when I was 21 years old with my good friend and LavaBox co-founder, John McLean. And we had a plan, and the plan was that we were going to sell a ton of high-volume template-based websites. We were going to make a huge amount of recurring revenue from the hosting, and then we were going to retire to an undisclosed beach location somewhere to live out the rest of our days sipping on margaritas. I do have an update for you, and that is that I'm not at the beach. You're with you. But although we didn't manage to get to the beach in 3 years, and I know a lot of your dreams of youth probably were a bit more challenging to achieve when you hit that old hit. We grew to about 20 staff, so for 2 kids in early 20s business, didn't do too badly. We ended up delivering over 2,000 websites to Kiwi SMEs. But when we first started the business, it worked fine with just John and I. We had I guess you would say, a pretty easy run, selling, marketing. But as the business grew, when we hired our first 2 staff, what we realized was that we weren't really able to scale up without the wheels falling off in pretty quick course. We had leads start to fall through the cracks almost instantaneously. We also found a major problem trying to deliver a high volume of product with communication gaps between our designers, or between our developers, or our copywriters, or how we were interacting with our clients at each step of that process. And as a result, what really changed for us was when we actually decided, as a team of 4, to bite the bullet and to invest in CRM. And we we paid what we thought at the time for a small team of 4 was a pretty hefty license bill, and we backed Salesforce as our platform of choice. And when we did that, what ensued over the next 3 years was a journey to build our entire business on a single customer-centric platform. So we built our sales process, all of our leads coming in, how they were assigned, how they were followed up on, how they were converted into an opportunity, how we quoted, how we automated our processes around everything up to the contract, and then how we actually built and delivered our projects. We built all of that on the platform. We were doing 45 to 50 sites a month, and we delivered the entire thing with a consistent customer experience and had happy customers coming out the other side of that process. So from there, we then put our marketing automation on the platform. We put our customer support on the platform. We also launched into other online marketing services, and we built processes for those out on the platform as well. So the reason that I'm telling you this is because what we realized with moving into the consulting space with LavaBox 3 years ago is that CRM has a unique ability to help you scale up your business with confidence and without the wheels falling off. And I don't know of any other tool that can enable growth in the way that this does. Now, I understand that there's a long and challenging road to getting CRM delivering fully to your organization. I'm not going to come up here and say it's fast. I'm sorry to tell you it's not cheap, and it's certainly not easy. But the results when you start to do this and you bring all of your business onto a single customer-centric platform, it allows you to actually define the way that we do things here, and then to make sure that the team that you work with are actually doing it the right way every time, and that gets improved and evolves over time with your business. So today what I'm going to be talking about is how do you actually do that, step by step. The session today is going to be broken down into 3 areas, and this is what I know to be true from my own experience in business and also in the successful customers that we're seeing within our clients and LavaBox. But the first thing is, you must back the right CRM platform. And this is all about selecting the right technology to build the system that's going to drive your current and your future needs. Now, once you back the right technology, the second thing you need to do is to design the system to empower your team. Because the funny thing is that if you actually focus on the end user, the guys who are actually looking at the system every day to do their role within your business, if it helps them to be effective and to succeed, it actually gets used, funnily enough. And when systems get used, it then gives you the opportunity to actually start improving that system based on the feedback of your team and of your customers. So we're going to break it down into these 3 sections. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to back the right CRM platform. So in this section, what we're going to look at is firstly, how do you define your priorities? You know, CRM is not just about lead and opportunity pipeline management. There are many places that you can start this journey. So what we want to do is to help you to define your priorities on where to focus for a successful first project. Following that, we then want to talk about how to assemble your project team. And this is about getting the right mix of people within your business involved in the project. Then we're going to talk about how to actually select the right technology, the right platform. And finally, we're going to talk about how to assess potential consulting partners like LavaBox and others. So, there's a lot on this slide because there's a lot of places that you can start. Now, you might choose to begin your CRM journey focusing on sales. So core lead and opportunity pipeline management, defining the sales process from lead through to contract. You might start with a focus on account management. So how do you extract further value from your existing customer accounts by tiering them and putting call cycles in place, translating account management from being reactive order taking to more strategic and proactive based on the sales data that you're getting through from your customers. You could begin with customer support or customer service. So getting your service team out of email and into a more defined case management structure that allows you to get the right cases in the right hands of the right people based on their skill set. You might look at integration as a core phase 1 priority. You might look at how do you bring other data from other business systems into your CRM, and then how do you leverage that data to drive the best next actions for your team. You could look at marketing automation. You know, there's only 2 ways that you can really influence somebody as a customer. One is either through the business processes that you implement, or the second is through the marketing content that they're receiving along the journey. So you might choose to weave the content and the processes together to help nurture and influence customers throughout their life cycle with your company. Finally, you could look at core business process automation. CRM platforms at their core are just platforms to build business processes. You might look at how do you define processes for your project management team, delivering client projects. You might look at how do you build processes for your sales support team or your administration team. So all of this is possible, but the key thing is where to start is about looking at where the most people in your business and where most of your customers are experiencing the most pain. And they tend to go together. If your team aren't getting it right, your customers aren't happy. So you need to focus on, I would say usually maybe 3 of those max is usually a good first project. You could go from 1 to 3 of those, but you want to kind of define where you begin. So the next thing, once you've got your project priorities worked out, you then want to look at, well, who do we need to get involved? Now, I'll start by saying if you're a large enterprise here today, where you've got in-house business analysts, you've got a large IT and development team in-house, you may assemble your team differently to what I'm recommending here. However, if you are a team of, say, I don't know, 10 to a couple of hundred staff, this is usually a pretty good structure. So firstly, you have your product owner. And having someone who is ultimately accountable for the CRM's continuous evolution in your business is critically important. You need to have the buck stop somewhere, and that person is usually going to be a senior business leader who really is accountable for making sure that the CRM aligns with the wider business strategy. They're also going to be managing the other members of the team, managing the relationship with key stakeholders, your consulting partner if you use one, all of those things. Next, you've got the business user. Now, this is going to be the person who is the senior manager of the team who are likely to be using the system. So it could be a service manager or a sales manager, but they're there to represent the perspective of the end users. So these guys are going to understand how that team operates, the current processes, the current problems with those processes, where the areas of opportunity are to improve things. And finally, you've got your technical user. So your technical user or users are the most technically proficient people in your company. You may not have many of those, but you work with what you have. But they'll be responsible for training the end users and also new employees who come into the business on the system. They'll be responsible for testing the system. And they'll be responsible for administering the system, making basic updates of new reports, fields, dashboards, security permissions, those kinds of things. Now, the reason this is important is because if you don't have the right people in the room at the start, the project can somewhat be doomed to fail, because if you don't have the wider business strategy, the perspective of the end user and the technical perspective brought together, then you're really at risk of running off in the wrong direction quite easily. So once you've got this team together, I'm just going to take a walk over here. The next thing you'll do is to document your requirements. Now, many people and many companies look at very long, 50, 100-page RFPs. For most SMEs, what we see is this is quite a good structure. The idea is, first of all, defining your value proposition, your organizational structure, really where you're trying to go as a business overall, and doing this so that you can communicate it concisely and clearly to any potential CRM vendors or any consulting partners that you're looking at engaging with. Secondly, why now? There's probably a reason you're all sitting here today. There's some burning challenges in your business that you're trying to solve, and communicating those clearly in your requirements is also really important. The next thing is to outline the project to a high level on what we call user stories. Now, a user story basically says, as a user, so for example, as a sales manager, I need to perform an action. So for example, run weekly sales meeting with my team so that I can keep them on track towards month end. Now, underneath that requirement, there's going to be a whole bunch of data to be captured, a whole bunch of processes to be defined. There's going to be a huge amount underneath that, but breaking it into those core requirements will help get you organized at the start. Then finally, what does success look like? And I'm going to harp on about this a little bit today, but what success means when I talk about it in a CRM context, it's not just about what does it mean to your business. It's actually about what does it mean to the team who are going to be using the system to do their job every day. What does it mean to your customers who are going to be interacting with your brand from first marketing touch point through to when they're a brand advocate, buying more, recommending? And also, what does it mean to your business commercially? So looking at the success from those 3 different perspectives and also looking at the project from those 3 perspectives is critically important as well. So once you've defined your requirements, The next thing you need to do is to work out what kind of CRM do you actually need. There are thousands of CRMs out there. Arguably, you could say there should be maybe a few less than there are, but there are a lot of options out there. Now, the key thing is, though, that you need to work out which of these you are actually trying to buy. There are 4 broad categories as I see it. The first is a bolt-on. A bolt-on is like you have an ERP system or an accounting package, and it says it comes with CRM as an additional feature. It's basically a place to store contact information. So if all you need is a Rolodex on the cloud, there you go. You can probably go now too, because there's not much more to tell you if that's all you need. But that's the first option. The other is more out of the box. So an out of the box option would be, for example, Pipedrive for core lead and opportunity pipeline management, or something like Zendesk for customer support would be some examples. The out of the box systems basically ask you as a business to conform your processes to the way the system is set up generally. So they're not really there to build your processes, but more for you to really work to the way those systems work. And typically they're good for what they do, but the challenge with them is that you're at risk of outgrowing them quite quickly, having to rip them out and go through a painful process of starting again. And you never want to rip systems out of your business more than you can help. It's pretty painful if you do it more than you have to. The next is an interesting category. It's industry designed, and an example of this would be Fergus Trade Software as a local New Zealand company. So they do trade software, and they do all of the timesheeting and the quoting, and they do all of the resource planning. It's a full suite of services in one software package to run a business. Again, the key challenge being that you have to run the way that system works, or it's not going to be for you. So again, they can be good if you want to run your business the way they suggest, but again, that's sort of what they do. And the final option is full platform. So Salesforce is an example of this, Microsoft Dynamics would be an example of this. And full platform CRMs are really interesting because at their core, they really are a platform to build out any kind of business process across marketing, sales, service, community engagement, how you have customers logging in through portals. They have the ability to develop custom applications for any kind of part of your business on them. And they have broad API capability to pull other data from systems into or push out of those systems. So I guess my advice here is you don't want to be comparing a out of the box with a full platform. It'd be like going out to buy a car and comparing a family sedan with a sports car. You need to decide what you're shopping for before you hit the lot, because the pricing is very different on them, the features are very different, and so you really want to make sure that you're comfortable with the direction you're headed before you start going out into the market comparing. So once you've decided which kind of CRM platform you're going to be working with, what do you actually evaluate? So the first thing is features and licenses. So within any kind of full platform CRM, you've got a wide variety of licenses that give you a lot of different features. So understanding what you need and what licenses reflect that and their cost is critical. And you don't want to be also paying for bells and whistles that you don't need. So you want to make sure that what you're buying works for you now and you can scale up later on as you need. Now the other thing is flexibility. Again, how can you customize this system, if at all? Are you able to create your own reports and dashboards, your own fields, your own processes? What's the level of customization that you can actually get within the system you're buying? The third is user experience. And user experience, again, this is the thing that your team look at every day. When they log in, they do their job, they're looking at this. So the thing is, user experience is not just a modern, slick interface. It's actually looking at how many clicks does it take to move around to do what I need to do? How quickly can I perform my role within the system as a user? Ease of integration. If you have other critical business systems and your CRM that you're considering cannot connect to them by API or by a pre-built connection, then you know that you've got an isolated system on your hands, and it's best to try to avoid that if you possibly can. Ease of administration. Can someone within your business actually operate this system and evolve it over time? Because your business isn't standing still, so really the system shouldn't be either. You don't want a system that reflects a snapshot of what you did in 2018 and 2025. So you've got to look at how can you actually keep this thing maintained. Also the community. Now this is a really interesting one. Nothing really speaks to a well-built and well-designed CRM system than the community that gathers around it. So does your CRM have local user groups? Do they run local events? Do they have online communities where people are sharing ideas on how they've developed or built on the system? So a thriving community is one of the best signs of a really great CRM product. Also, does it just work for you now, or can it actually handle your long-term roadmap? This is also really critical. And finally, local customer references. So there's really nothing that speaks better than customers. Now, of course, any customer references, I imagine your CRM potential vendors probably vetted to make sure they're not going to rag on them. But if you can't have any local customer references speaking highly of the product, then that's probably a bit of a red flag as well. So once you've then evaluated the CRM, the next thing you want to look at is what kind of consulting partner do you need. Now, the first thing I'll point out is that consulting partners come in all shapes and sizes. But the goal of a consulting partner relationship is to complement the skill set of your internal team. So you need to make sure that you're selecting someone who actually fills in the gaps, because CRM projects take a mix of business analysis, they take a mix of IT project management skills, there's a mix of declarative configuration of the system, there's technical code and development potentially, there's the ability to integrate other systems, there's end-user training and rolling out the system and managing the change. So consulting partners can help with any of these areas, but you want to choose one that actually can complement what you guys can already do in-house. So you've got everything from a bottom-tier package-based offering where it's a simple deployment, basic quick start setups, usually kind of 5 to 20K, they're sort of high volume, the packages just sort of do what they do. A freelance consultant, you might have just one person who you want to come in and work in-house as part of your team for the project. And again, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on the skills required and whether that one person can actually fill all the gaps that you need. You might look at a mid-tier consulting firm, and they typically fall into a development shop who are more strong with complex code and development projects, versus a consulting shop who probably is more LavaBoxes, where you need more business process improvement and insights around user experience, customer experience, and marketing as part of the project. Or if you happen to be a large enterprise, there's also the enterprise end of town, and these guys are, dealing with big transformational projects over thousands of users that affect potentially hundreds of thousands of end customers. They call them the cavalry within house, project managers and business analysts and the whole deal. And again, they're kind of more 100K up to God knows what. So that's kind of typically just some price guides and some sort of idea on what you might be looking for. What do you evaluate in a consulting partner? The first thing is, do they get it? When you meet with them, do they intuitively understand your business, your users, your operating environment? Or do you feel like you're kind of trying to explain to them what your business does and it's like they're hearing it for the first time, they have no context? So that's an important thing, is how much do they kind of already know as far as background domain knowledge on your business? Secondly, are they certified? Most CRM platforms have quite a rigorous certification process, so you want to make sure your consultants are certified in those areas. Have they completed comparable projects? So again, this might not be in your industry, but it should be a CRM using, it's a similar use case. So for example, is it a B2B help desk? Is it dealing with a high volume of transactional sales with hundreds of leads coming in every day? So even if it's not the same industry, can they point to a similar kind of use of the CRM? Also, who is assigned to the project? So you might get a pretty slick kind of pre-sales guy like me coming in and kind of telling you how great it all is. But who are the actual consultants who you'll be working with on the project? Because again, who you work with and their ability, certifications and experience are just as important as the company overall as a partner. What's their delivery process? We'll be talking more about this in the second piece, and this might be the more kind of controversial topic around the different ways you can implement IT projects like Agile and Waterfall, but you want to be confident that their process is going to deliver what you need. How will they support the rollout? Do you need help training your users, selling your users on how to use the system and why they should be using it? Or are you guys okay to run with that on your own? So again, can they support you in the areas that you need? And finally, do you get on with them? It sounds kind of trivial, but these relationships at their best can run for months, can run for years or even many years versus just months. So if the idea of sitting down with them in 2 years' time to talk about the next project makes your head spin, probably not the right partner. Keep looking. So at this point, you have now hopefully successfully got the right CRM technology and you've got the right partner on board to help you if you need it, and you're now ready to start implementing this project. So just a note, in the guides that you've got here, all the content that I'm talking about is gone into far more depth and detail. So if you've kind of missed a lot of this content I'm throwing at you, you've got this here for you, but there's some actions which are also in the guide on specific steps you can take in your evaluation to get yourself ready to make that decision. All right, section 2. Now, this is all about how do you now go through and implement the system and design it in a way that actually empowers your team to be more effective in their roles day to day. So we're going to talk about how to implement the system and then also how to engage and train them before you roll the system out to ensure that they're successful out of the gate. So in terms of IT project management, there are typically two that get put forward for a CRM project, broadly speaking. The first is Agile. The Agile's background is typically being a more custom software development, but it's now being used more frequently in CRM projects as well. And the goal of Agile is to rapidly develop the system quickly and iterate fast based on the feedback of users and customers. But you're usually starting with quite a basic initial minimum viable product as an initial deployment. Now the second option is the more traditional software model called Waterfall. And this is where you're trying to consider all the requirements up front. And then you're trying to build a more linear software process through scoping, building, testing, releasing. Now the challenge is that although not one of these is better than the other, the innate challenge with Agile is that if you build a very basic initial system and then try and iterate rapidly over the top of it, if the system doesn't actually help your team use it from day one to do their jobs more effectively, if it's set up in such a basic way that they're not effective, then you risk disengaging them before the whole thing even gets off the ground. It's kind of like a bad first date, it's pretty hard to come back from. Now, the second thing is Waterfall. Now with Waterfall, the key problem is, no matter how hard you try, you can't really consider all requirements up front. So the way that we've found it tends to work for a lot of the more, I guess, small and medium enterprise clients that we work with, the whole approach that we take is to give users a system that improves their lives from day one, but that also gives them the opportunity to rapidly improve the system based on the feedback of their users. It's trying to find a line between those two approaches that can work. So, what I'm going to talk you through is the LavaBox implementation process. Now, no doubt, other consulting partners, some will use a similar process or elements of this process. All we can say is that we've found that this tends to work really well for the types of clients who we usually work with. And it begins with the scoping phase. So in scoping, what we're looking to do here is to really get as much granular detail up front as we can to get, ideally, a document that's going to detail the system to maybe 60 or 70% of where it's going to end up for that first phase. So what we cover is the customer journey and business processes in detail. We also talk about how each job role is going to function within the system. So how will a sales manager versus a general manager versus a service manager use the system? How can we automate some of your current processes where you know they're just slower than they have to be? How can we use workflow automation to speed these up? What kind of data model will we be using? And when I say data model, I basically mean what are the objects, like leads or contacts or custom objects within the system that we've built, and then what data needs to be captured against those objects at what stage in the process. Because again, you have to think about what data you need at the first time you call a customer. What data do you need when it's ready to actually sign as a contract? There's different data that must be captured at each stage. You're also going to look at how that data then can be visualized in reports and dashboards. And again, dashboards for the end user, dashboards for the team, dashboards for, for the CEO. You're also going to look at security permissions and profiles, making sure that every user can only see what they need and nothing they don't. Now, a few tips for the scoping phase. The first is, proceed with caution if you're going to automate any processes that aren't yet market tested. And this isn't to say don't do it, it's just to say be careful. Because the thing is, if you've got a new product or service or business unit and you try and automate that process, it can often go differently than you think it will when it gets to market. I'll tell you a story about this. When at 123 Online we first decided to get into online marketing, John and I sat down and we said, all right, here's how it's going to go. We're going to automate the sales process. We're going to sell to these people with this kind of follow-up cycle. We're going to have clients come on board, and if the results come in above this level, they're going to go down this account management track. And if they come in below that level, they're going to go down that account management track. And what ensued was that after we launched, we found that the contract terms were wrong, the sales process was wrong, we found out that the reports and the whole workflow was wrong, and we spent a lot of time and money having to re-engineer what was a functioning beast of a system, but it was done without the real understanding of how this should work on the front line each day. So really keep that in mind. Automate what you know will work for sure, but if it's brand new, you might want to start with more just core kind of data capture, a bit less automation, and then layer that in as you learn the lessons from the front line. When you're designing your processes, don't just replicate what you do now, enhance them. So think about this. If I'm using paper trays and tick sheets, there's a best possible way that I can do that. But there's also a best possible way that I can do that when I pull in all of the capability of CRM, getting data in from my other systems, using that to serve best next actions to my team. There's a whole other way that you could run the exact same process. So don't just do what you do, make it better as part of the project. Otherwise, you're just giving your team what they do now with a new interface, and that's kind of a waste of time. Ensure that nothing gets stuck with the ball in the customer's court without a defined next step. A really basic example of this. Let's say that I have leads coming in, and I try and call them, I can't get hold of them. I change them to attempted contact number 1, and then nothing happens. So what you get over a couple of months is a massive list of leads that say attempted contact 1, and that's it. So what you want to do is you want to have, in that scenario, I attempt the contact, the system schedules my next follow-up task, it emails the customer, with my email signature on it, and if it's still on that status in a couple of days, then it pushes through the next task for me to try again, and then same process. So again, it's defining how many times we call leads, how many times we do these basic functions that's really critical, and making sure that we don't leave the part of the process where it's just balls in their court now, and then nothing happens. And finally, we really recommend trying to document that scoping in pretty granular detail. So what fields, what data, what reports, all that should really be in there pretty clearly before you start building. Because otherwise, you're kind of just getting a bunch of lumber delivered. You start just going, oh, we'll just try and make a house out of this, but you don't know exactly what you're going to build, and it can kind of go sideways pretty quickly. Now finally, we recommend that your project team review that scoping document individually, not as a team first, because again, you've got the wider business perspective, you've got the end user, and you've got the technical. So they'll all see different things in that scope, and if you have them all in the same room, chances are they're going to not go through as thorough a process to see all of those different angles. So again, by reviewing individually and then coming together, you end up with a much better result when you review. And so when you review, the goal here is that now we're getting the system from maybe 60% of where it's going to end up to maybe 70, 75% of where it's going to end up. And so at this point, we're ready to build that into a working system. Now, after we've built it, what we're then going to be doing is giving, I guess, our customers the chance to export data out of their existing systems and to build it. There we go. To export data out of their existing systems and getting it ready to import into the CRM. Now, you want to be exporting data into a CSV kind of data format that maps what's been built in the system, so your partner should really be providing that to you. And I'd also point out it's a lot easier to clean your data up now than it is to clean it up when it's in the system. Going through a spreadsheet is a lot quicker than trying to do it in a live CRM environment. So this can be done by a more junior member of your team. There are tools that can help deduplicate and automate if you've got the scale for that as well. So, once the system's built to spec, then it moves into the testing phase. Not the releasing phase. The testing phase. Okay. So, with the testing phase, the idea here is that we go through an initial quality check because you can't test a system that is broken or doesn't work. You have to be able to go through the end-to-end process or else you can't test it. So once we've checked it, we then demo the system to our customer. We then give them video tutorials, so the system actually is clearly defined, so users who are starting at the company can see the videos on how to use it properly. And then our clients are going to go through user acceptance testing. So user acceptance testing is all about not just testing does it work, but also testing for user experience and customer experience. So using this as a chance to, now that you've got the system in your hands, you can see it, you can play with it, it's not just a big document. Now you want to use this as an opportunity to, again, get another round of iterations at this point. You want to get it closer to the finish mark again. And so at this stage, What we want is now a system that's maybe more 85, maybe 90% to where it's going to finish for this piece of the project. And at that point, you've got something that you can put in the hands of your end users and it will help them. They're not going to get turned off by it. But what I point out is that if the system's only, say, 60% to where it needs to be, as a user, it feels like it's 20%. If a system's more 90%, it probably feels more like it's 60% or 70%, but it's good enough that they see the potential and they're now engaged. So at that point, you've got to make a few decisions. So now, who is going to be leading the rollout? Is it going to be your consulting partner combined with your project team, or your project team handle this part on their own? And if there are any issues that come through, use an issues register. So this is really where you've got a live document where as errors or issues come up, you can put them in there and it can be shared live with your consulting partner. And to be honest, even a Google Sheet will do the job, just something that's live and shareable. And get your super user ready. So they're going to be your internal team's first port of call. One of your technical users will become a super user. They need to be able to create reports, dashboards, help end users, help new users to the business as well. Now finally, the releasing phase. And this is really important. This is the first time that your users will actually have seen this system. So what you want to make sure here is that there's two parts to getting them engaged in this. The first part, we recommend running a full-day workshop and a workshop for each team who is using the system. So if you've designed a system for account managers and for salespeople, we'll run two separate sessions. Don't try and combine them, run one for each. And what you want to do here, firstly, is to have your product owner explain to them and really sell the concept and why have we decided to run with this CRM. You want to have them framing the benefits in terms of them succeeding in their role, the company that they work for, and the customer that they serve. How does this system help support those three areas? You then want to run through a full system demo. And again, it's the first time that they've probably seen the system. So you want to be able to have either your super user or consulting partner demo it pretty nicely end to end so they get the whole picture. And then you want to open it up to questions for them, because they might have baggage from CRM that's been deployed poorly. They might have worked at another company where it didn't go so well. So you want to have any chance for them to ask questions or to raise any concerns and to address them head on before you get started. And then in the afternoon, the final piece of this is that you then want to train them in small groups. We recommend 3 or 4 to a small group, drip feeding them each piece of the process and then moving on to the next group. And the idea here is that they can then learn it in small chunks, they can support each other as the super user moves on, and again creating that environment where more technical users are supporting the less technical is really key. And at this point, the rubber hits the road. When they show up the next day, they're not doing what they did the day before. There's a pretty significant change here. They are now logging in and using this new system. So again, this is a pretty important part of the process, because if you get this wrong, all of that hard work up to now can kind of go out the window to some degree. So in the third section, we're going to be talking about committing to continuous improvement. And we're going to run through how do you manage the iteration cycle? How do you actually get feedback from the users and see the system get better? And we're going to talk about how do you clarify your long-term roadmap. So this is about getting a set of future projects lined up that can help to continually improve the scope and scale of the system in your business. So, there's a really critical point where a CRM project has to pass for it to succeed. And where this is that if users get a chance to actually use the system, provide feedback on the system, and then to see the system get better, at that point it is now their system. And they're really now advocates for its continuous evolution within your business. If you fall short of that critical milestone, you likely have a very, very expensive cloud Rolodex on your hands, and that's not good. So, how do you actually go about getting that feedback? The first thing that you want to do is set a bit of a ground rule. And the ground rule is that if it isn't in the system, it does not exist. And the key thing here is that it actually starts with the immediate managers, right? If they're running their sales meetings with this data, if they're running their one-on-ones with this data, if they're speaking to that data like it's true and accurate and real, if someone hasn't been using the system and they derail a sales meeting with a bunch of random data that's not up to date, they'll pretty quickly get the point that they need to get this stuff into the system. So that's the first bit. The second bit is to set up a feedback channel within the CRM itself. So what we're talking about here is that CRMs have like internal collaboration tools. Salesforce uses a tool called Chatter. And basically what this allows you to do is to have users submitting feedback to a topic-specific thread as they're using the system. Because the thing is that frustration often leads to improvements. So a user's going to get frustrated using the system, something isn't working the way they think it should, something bugs out and doesn't work as expected. If they don't have an easy, quick way of submitting that feedback or that query into the system, then they just move on with their day and that insight is now actually lost. So what you want to do here is to set up that feedback channel, and then as a project team you can then collate that feedback and you can then start to prioritize it. The other thing is that there are also adoption dashboards which come out of the box with most CRM platforms. So what an adoption dashboard does is it tells you how many users are logging in, it tells you what features they're using or not using, how long they're being logged in for. So this is also really critical to make sure that even fields that aren't ever being used, maybe they should be deleted, for example. You know, like there's some good stuff you can find from that data. So then you get all of this feedback. What do you do with it? Well, you need to collate it and prioritize it. So the first thing we would recommend is that you need to start with fortnightly feedback sessions. So users shouldn't use the system for months and months without actually getting feedback seen in action, because otherwise they think what's the point of providing feedback. So start with fortnightly, after the first 2 sessions move to monthly, and then after the first quarter move to quarterly for the rest of that first year. I guarantee you if you do that, you commit to actually reviewing and improving the system based on that, you will find that you have a very, very transformative and successful system running. You group your changes. So roadmap, is it an idea for a significant future project which needs to be put up against other potential further investments that you're going to make? Is it a simple declarative change, adding a new field, creating a new report? Is it a process change? Is it changing, for example, leads coming in and how they're assigned, or cases coming in and how they're getting put in the right hands of the right agent? It's looking at making sure that if you make a process change, that it doesn't just change, that you actually tell the users that you changed the way that they're going to be operating as well. And also not feasible. I'm sure you guys know not every idea is a good idea, so you might find that there are also some that shouldn't be included in the list. And finally, you then want to look at establishing what change do we make and in what order are we going to make it. So consider the cost, the technical resource, the consulting investment, if there's going to be further financial investment required. Is there going to be more scoping or more training required? You then want to look at the benefit. How many users and how many customers does this change actually benefit? And you also want to look at the opportunity cost, of course. So if we do this, it's at the expense of something else, and so you want to weigh that all up. When you then execute that feedback, we recommend using like a Kanban style project management tool if you're executing it in-house. So things like even Trello, things like that can work quite well for this. Test before you release, get a small number of more technically proficient users to actually test the system first. And also use the development sandbox if it's a significant change, because if you just start playing with your live system, you might find that you have 30 salespeople pulling their hair out because they now can't close their opportunities, right? So you've got to make sure that you're doing it in the right environment. And I mentioned it just before, but don't just go and make changes and not tell anybody. It kind of stands to reason that when you make a change to the way someone will be working, it might even be a simple post to the update thread in the collaboration feed that a change has been made, but it might be that you need to schedule that training and to make sure that people are now doing the system process correctly. But the key takeaway is that if you do this right, users will see this as a commitment to helping them to succeed in their role day to day. It's not making CRM a beast to feed or big brother watching them. It's actually all about keeping them at the heart of it and helping them. And also, you want to clarify your long-term roadmap as well. So this is the last sort of piece of this. The thing is, your business doesn't stand still, and neither should your CRM. Like if you cast your mind back to what you were doing as a business 5 years ago, the services that you're offering, the makeup of your team or your roles, the processes that you followed, the technology that you used, I'd hazard to guess that it's probably, or hopefully it's quite different than what it is today. So if you just set it up and forget about it, you've only got a snapshot in time of the way your business operates. You've really got to make sure that this is continually evolving with your business as you go. And the thing is, if you've managed to successfully get to this point, you've actually gained some credibility. So if you're an owner of a business, you should actually be starting to see some commercial wins that have come out of this project at this point. So it's pretty easy to make the decision to continue investing. If you're more a senior manager or a business leader, at this point, you've now also gained credibility with key stakeholders. You've shown that you can actually pull off a CRM project. So now you've got probably some pretty good momentum to look at what comes next. And when I look at what comes next, I typically would group this into 3 different areas. The first one, integrated systems. So is the next project about connecting other business systems via API or middleware through into your existing CRM platform, or pushing CRM data out into those other systems? Is it more of an additional layer? So is it more about taking the existing process that you've built and then layering something pretty awesome on top of it? So for example, I've now got my lead to contract sales process worked out, but I now want to go in and add in a quote proposal generation tool and have e-signature to sign that off and to give that to RX to make that process run even faster. Or is it new horizons? Is it actually bringing entirely new teams or business units into the CRM environment? And again, whichever one of these you decide, focus on where most of your users, your team, right, and your customers are experiencing the most pain. And again, they go together. If your team are not getting it right, your customers are not happy. So you need to make sure that you're putting these into the right kind of order so that you can move forward with some confidence. And again, every project should deliver strong commercial wins unto itself, because without it, you're never going to get to the 3rd or the 4th phase of your CRM journey. You get stuck on phase 1. So just some final thoughts before I wrap up. And thanks for your attention. It's been great. But I guess just as I wrap up, one thing I'd point out is that, in my view, the greatest competitive advantage that small and medium enterprises have over their larger competitors is the ability to compete and win on customer experience. You know, large enterprises have the buying power, they often have the product development, but when they try and win on customer experience, they have to take a whole bunch of legacy systems with them that they've accumulated over the years, and they have to try and roll out their processes to thousands of potential users. It's pretty tough. Whereas smaller organizations can run a whole lot faster, build more complex and intricate systems, and roll them out quicker and more efficiently, and a lot more economically as well. So really what I'd encourage you to do is to think about, if everyone in your business was actually working off a single customer-centric platform, and they were doing everything the right way every time, so every customer interaction, every process was being handled the right way every time, and not only that, but then you're getting feedback from your users, team, and customers, and then making the whole engine run even faster. What would that mean for you? And so, to my mind, I'll just come back to what I know to be true. We've seen this in our own business, and we've seen it in many of our clients' businesses as well. If you back the right CRM platform, the right technology, if you then keep the end user at the heart of it and design the system to empower your team in the way that they perform their role, and then finally, if you then, as a business, commit, no matter what other projects you've got, no matter what kind of budget constraints you have, if you commit to continuous improvement of that system, it will make a huge impact on the way you run your business. Now, as I said at the beginning, the journey's not fast. In fact, in some ways, it's never ending, because your business never stops changing. And as I said, apologies, it ain't changing. It's not, we and you and anyone who goes down this road needs to be prepared to make it a core priority and to invest. And it's not easy, but I guarantee you, if you take this road bit by bit, phase by phase, you will see that it makes a meaningful and transformative impact on the way that you run your business and the way that you deal with your customers. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it.